Hey folks, welcome back to Smart Simple Fit. My name is Davin, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Andrew Tang. He's an incredibly strong young man. If you've seen some of his enormous lifts on Instagram, then you'll know just how much of a behemoth this guy is. He's also a coach. So we're going to talk today about all kinds of different things, lifting and coaching as well. He's going to tell us about his background. I'm going to ask him for some of his thoughts on some controversial things that are being stirred up in the lifting community, and maybe for some hot takes as well. So, Andrew, thanks for joining me today. It's a real pleasure to have
Yeah,
you on.
man. Thanks for the intro. I just I just like sharing my, training footage on Instagram, posting here and there,
Oh yeah.
just trolling a little bit and having some good old fun with all of it too. But so I guess to dive into it, I first got started with just exercise or like just going to the gym when I was 16 years old. Nothing too serious. Like I bought one of those like 24-hour fitness memberships through Costco and it could last like 2 years. I was like, I guess I'm gonna make the most of it. I was like hopping from machine to machine to machine. Just I didn't really have a clue what I wanted to do, but I just knew that like I wanted to take a little more control over my health. When I was that young too, I just kind of felt like I had a craving to just do more things for myself. Like yeah, I had school, and when I was in school in high school, I was just like I was doing a lot of art and stuff like that, and I was really into that. But I just didn't really have much else going on. My family had a family restaurant, so I'd just be there all the time and help out. And I was just like, I need just something else. So that's how I got into it. I was also pretty unhealthy, I would say, in the sense of that I just wasn't very active and I didn't really understand like nutrition or anything like that. And I just wanted to do something that was healthy for me, that was kind of an outlet that I could just call my own. And so I just went. I didn't know anything. I just went. I just went from machine to machine, and eventually, I think I just started to get more exposed to fitness in like through YouTube, whether it be Barbell Brigade, which my sister, she would consume some of that content. And I think I just picked it up from her. She was into like weightlifting, powerlifting, and all that when she was in college. She's like 6 years older than me.
Oh wow.
So I think when I was like 16, 17, she was like wrapping up her third or last year or fourth year of college. And excuse me, she's been doing all that stuff. And I'd kind of go to the gym with her. I'd pick up a couple things. And then it just kind of went on my own way. And yeah, like I remember consuming content from Barbell, Buff Dudes. I don't know if you know them.
Classic. Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. I thought I was the only one. Yeah, I love their stuff. Elliot Hulse's one as well. He's kind of went off the deep end. I still have a lot of respect for Elliot Hulse in terms of like what he's done for the community and what he's put out. Definitely put out a lot of woo woo, but like I kind of like I think as somebody as a young male who didn't really like know what direction he wanted to take with his life and just kind of felt like I don't know, I think when I was younger I felt like I just had a lot of questions about things, like why things were, and whether I agree or disagree with the things that he would say and the information he'd share, which most of it was just his own personal experience anyways, which is like, I can't refute that. That's his own thing. I think I just kind of felt like this guy who's strong, like super jacked, but also like so well spoken. I was like, that's kind of cool.
He's a
Um,
very confident dude. Very
yeah, that
confident.
too. And I was just like, that's really cool. And like, yeah, as like a young guy, I was like, well, I just not that I was like the most awkward kid, but I think I just didn't never, not never, but I had a hard time finding my voice. So I think kind of exposing myself to that content and just kind of thinking more, I guess, about like different ideas that I've never thought about. I think it just kind of helped me work through some things. And for what it was worth, within that time period of my life, I think it served its purpose. And I was able to kind of grow and do my own thing from there, whether it be like figuring myself out more when it comes to, yeah, like what I want to do with life, what I want to do with fitness. Because at first it was just, I just want to work out to be healthier, feel better about myself, look better. I was like, I think at the time I was like 250. When I was like 16 years old, I started, I was like 250, but like a skinny fat 250. I managed to like drop down to, I think, like 225 or something. Built a decent amount of muscle, nothing crazy, but like, I had help from friends, like they'd give me free programs that they would run. And I just like started getting really strong. And then I went to college for a year, joined the powerlifting club, met one of my good friends, Greg. He was like, Andrew, I'm getting you on a program. Like you need to be on a program. And I was like, cool. Kind of was this guinea pig. Did my first meet in February of 2018. It was my very first meet. It was USAPL Spartan Open in San Jose. That was a very fun meet. I went 8 for 9. I missed my last deadlift. I was really pissed about it. In retrospect, it was a dumb
Yeah.
call. I probably could have done my attempts easier or differently, not easier. But I don't know.
Do you
When I
remember
was,
what your numbers are or what they were from that?
yeah, no, I do. It was a 518 squat. I think 250 or 260 for bench. My bench has come a long way, dude.
Wow.
And I I'm pretty sure I pulled 639 for my second attempt, but I really wanted like 660 or something. But I think I got 639. Um yeah, I think to circle back a little bit about like when I started getting into lifting, and just the my first couple of years with it, I was a very lost like kid. And I think that bred a lot of angst. Well, of course, I'm sure everyone can relate to that to an extent. That bred a lot of angst and a lot of, I want to say rage, but I don't know exactly where that rage was directed. But nonetheless, it just kind of felt like I had all these boiling emotions and I didn't really know what to do with it. And I think lifting in a way, although it was something that was still mine, it was still something I enjoyed. It started becoming something that I felt like was really self-destructive. And I had my first like quarter of college or first quarter or two. My grades were pretty good. Like I was going to class all the time. I wasn't skipping things. I think I probably had roughly like a 3 point something GPA. I don't remember, but the last half was just like rough. And lifting was kind of the only thing I had. And I kind of just felt like there just wasn't, just something wasn't right with where I was in my life. So pretty much dropped out from college. I didn't want to just throw school away entirely. So I still went to a community college in my area. But the entire time I just kept lifting. And I feel like that's just been the one constant in my life. And, just meeting people along the way, getting more exposed to other coaches in like the powerlifting sphere, learning from them, learning by doing, which is funny because that was my college's motto. I went to Cal Poly SLO for like for fine arts of all things, going to a technical school
Nice.
for that, but nonetheless, um, I just kind of like I just knew that I just knew that this was something I never just wanted to give up. Um, and and yeah, like the goals in the beginning were just to, do something for myself. And that's still, I think that's kind of the cornerstone for me. It's just, I'm doing this for myself. Whether it be like my own personal lifting or like my coaching is just, I'm doing this for myself and I'm doing this to help others. Or at least that's what it's evolved to. And as far as like the lifting goals and stuff, I didn't even think about like records or anything like that. I think at my first meet I did get the state record for deadlift, but like
Wow.
honestly, state records don't really count. It's the national ones that do. They mean something for sure, but like there are tiers to it. And so I think now like I I still want to compete. And I would love to be in the game of competing for as long as I can. Um, but I'm also, I think, accepting that my timeline is going to be different than other people's. And there are other more important or pressing things to take care of besides just powerlifting. Because I feel like after I did my first and second and third meet, I kind of felt like I was too wrapped up in like the idea of powerlifting or the sphere of it.
Yeah.
I think a good way to put it is like, when you kind of miss like the forest for the trees, when you just miss the big picture. And I
Yeah.
think I was just kind of missing the big picture on things. Which is why like in the last year or two, just focusing more on the coaching, focusing more on developing myself, focusing more on being able to just provide, whether it be to provide for myself, provide for my loved ones, um, and also just provide like quality content too. Because I feel like there's there's a lot of good content that's out there.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a deficit in, although there's a lot of good content out there on like YouTube, Instagram, whatever, I feel like there's an overall general deficit in the common person's like lifting IQ. And that's by no means me like trying to say that like I have some like high lifting IQ or something, or that like I know better than most people. It's like I probably don't. But I think what matters is being able to take your or my experiences of my own success and sharing that with others in a way that is applicable. Because I don't think I don't think I don't think methods, I don't think styles are really important. I think what matters is having a framework and an understanding. Because if you can empathize with someone, or if you can take a framework and change it and have it run on someone else and have it work, I think that's more valuable than being like, we got to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, okay, maybe we do, but why? Like, I think there should be like kind of a reason behind that. Um, so, so yeah, I don't
That's very
know.
similar to my own views. That's very similar where
Okay.
the methods, like it's like when someone says, this one always bothers me, where it's like, okay, I'm glad you found what works for you. And I know what they mean by that. They don't mean anything bad by it, but it's like
Yeah.
in that statement, it's almost loaded to say that I found the thing that works for me, when in reality, I found a thing that works for me. And if
Yeah,
I did a different thing, it probably would have worked as well.
yeah, I think it's always it's just about finding another piece of the overall puzzle. And I think it's also about, I think there are so many styles of programming, there's so many schools of thoughts when it comes to programming. And I think at the end of the day, when it's only as valuable as when it's needed, and when it's actually like applicable. Which is why, I guess kind of going back to what I was saying with, just being more accepting of my own timeline of lifting and competing. Like, I haven't done a competition since 2021, and it was USPA. It was a really fun meet, did it with a bunch of my friends. And I was intending to do a meet in March of this year. But I had to pull out around, I think, late January, just because prior to that I got sick with like the flu, and like the flu of all things like it took me out. Like, I went back into the gym as soon as like my symptoms cleared up. I was so happy, and then everything just hurt. Everything was hurting. My squat strength just wasn't there. It was in the gutter. My deadlift, oddly enough, held up really well, which I thought was interesting. But I think that was just because I was spamming like my posterior chain. I was doing so many RDLs, so many straight leg deadlifts, all of which was worth it. If you're not doing that right now, please do, especially if you're a single deadlifter. But and I think like I had a partial tear in my pec. Nothing crazy. I just felt like, I don't know if you've ever experienced an injury like that. It wasn't super major. Like, I've had friends that like formed like their adductors and like really bad to the point of bruising and stuff like that. And what I always hear is that it feels like saran wrap, just like ripping, like just that sensation and like that sound. And that's kind of what I felt. And I was like, all right, something's up. We're not doing this meet, Paris. This sucks. But I was also just feeling a little burnt out at that point too, because it's disheartening. Like it sucks. And I was like, all right, I think I need to pivot. I think I need to focus on my health, which is why I've been hammering away at like an off-season style training. And I'm hoping to compete in December of this year. I'm a princess when it comes to meet prep. I hate training through winter, but I can at least end my prep in winter. I don't mind that. I think as I've gotten older and just objectively stronger, my joints are just more sensitive to like things like the weather and stuff like that. But a solid warm up usually takes care of it. I just like to complain, but but yeah, like about that, like that sucked for me to have to do, because I was like, I really wanted to get into doing another meet. I was throwing up really big numbers. Like I was basically taking my old Wonder Rep maxes and doing it for reps. And I was just like, holy cow, that's crazy. Like I'm like that entirely exceeded what I thought was possible. But I'm happy to be incrementally bumping up specificity and stuff like that right now to get into it. And I think a lot of people, what people don't understand is it takes a lot of time to put together a really solid training cycle. And I don't just mean like a 16-week prep. I'm talking about an entire year's worth of training. What are you doing for, the first 3 to 6 months of your training cycle? What are you doing after? When is your meet? How are we planning that? Because I think an issue I see now is that there are a lot of people running programs that are way too specific. And if it works for them in the sense of like, cool, like they've gained strength, all that stuff, like that's the point. That's awesome. But I think the problem is that might not work for everyone, and everyone's tolerance for that is different. And I think what separates a good coach from a great coach is just that understanding of like, what is this person, your client, your athlete, what is their tolerance right now, identifying their needs directly, and then being able to build and grow off of that. Because I think like with most things, there are seasons. Like there are seasons for, hey, like we're just gonna be a workhorse. Like you're gonna do some tough work, and we're not gonna max out every session or something, but like we're gonna get in some quality reps. You're gonna have to swallow your pride. We're gonna be working on exercises where you're objectively weaker, and we know that. So enter your sessions knowing that. Still gonna go hard on your accessories and things like that, but we're not gonna be touching like comp specific stuff. And I think that's good to take like those steps back and like develop that itch to like want to get back into it. And then by the time you are getting back into it, it's like cool, like you're healthier, you're primed, you're ready to do it, you can just execute. And I think I've seen a lot of people like come into powerlifting and then come out because they just like they burn out. They get way too close to the sun. They never drop back down until it's way too late. And I hate seeing that. And I personally have been there like a couple of times myself, where it's just like, damn, like all this effort, and like for what? Because of like maybe a silly injury, or you're just feeling super drained, or you just kind of stick with the same stimulus for too long. But I think you can like control that. And I know like we were wanting to talk about like programming and stuff like that, and like keeping exercises on rotation. A general rule of thumb for me, especially accessory work, is to keep things going for roughly 6 to 8 weeks. But if like a client's really feeling something, then I'll keep it in for longer. It really just depends. I'm also just very like, I also just like to check in with my clients too. Like if it's been like the 10th week mark and they're like, no, like we're still good. I'm like, all right, cool. Like we'll milk it. We'll keep it going. Or same example, 10-week mark. I hate it. It's like, all right, cool. We'll do something else entirely, And I think it's as simple as that, just checking in with clients, asking, but, but I've noticed like 6 to 8 weeks is roughly a good time. And then you can kind of change it up if you want. Exercises like bigger exercises like compounds, I'm a little bit different on. I recently did a video about squat progression. So
I saw it. I liked
that.
it. That's interesting.
Thanks,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
Yeah, Paris inspired me to make that video. So I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
So
idea.
is this, I just have to ask, how long has this been brewing, your idea of approaching squat programming? Is this something that's more recent, or has this been kind of your bread and butter for years? This is study.
No, I picked this up from Paris, and we were just running it for a while, and we did it the first time when I first started working with him back in I think it was like spring of last year, and I was just in a mood to front squat, so he
Yeah.
gave me the same scheme, 1.5 reps for a block, pause for a block, and then like regular for the next. And I hit a crazy PR in front squat, hit 550 towards the end of
Yeah.
the well, that was
Unbelievable.
absolutely wild. And then we just decided to keep that same like progression scheme going forward. Like we did that for high bar. And then we did 4 weeks of 1.5 reps, did 4 weeks of pauses, and then we just kept pushing with comp, which I guess as a side note, I do want to record a follow-up for that video and flesh it out a little bit more, but like you can adjust the timeline based off your needs for sure with that scheme. Like I was running comp squats for if I hadn't pulled out, I probably would have been running it for like 12-ish weeks or something.
Right.
But nonetheless, once I started this new training cycle, was using the SSB squat for a while. We did the same thing, 1.5 reps, pauses for probably like 8 weeks almost. And then now I'm going back to like front squatting and stuff like that. So that was something that Paris showed me, and I just loved it. I've started to do it with my own clients too. I don't always do that for all my clients though. It's something I mentioned in the video too. Like 1.5 reps is, I think it's a great variation. I'm aware of a couple coaches that like don't think so, which is totally okay. Because there is also a part of me that's like, if I had a client that is kind of squirrely and maybe they don't know how to move just yet, they don't know how to get tight, they don't know, they're just not very coordinated. I probably wouldn't give them 1.5 reps because the skill ceiling for that movement is, I would say, relatively a bit higher because you're getting in an extra rep. Like, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of balancing that you have to do. So, yeah, I wouldn't give that to just anybody. If anything, for the main movements, I think my staples are, at least for like variations and stuff, my staples are just a lot of pause work. Pause squatting, pause deadlifting, long pause benching. I think those, I think learning how to create an isometric contraction is crucial in the game of powerlifting because when it comes to displaying your strength, it's about doing so. It's about you have your main movers, right? Like in any exercise. In the case of like a squat or a deadlift, it's going to be pretty much your lower body. This is a metaphor I took from Starting Strength of all places. Still haven't finished the book. I'm like a third of the way in, but but I got this from them and I really liked it because even though they used a car analogy, and I'm not a car guy, but even I understood it, and I was like, okay, this is valuable. Like this needs to be shared. Anyways, so basically they were saying that you're in a squat, your legs act as the engine. That's what generates power. That's what's going to get a weight moving from point A to point B. Your torso, your trunk, all that is the transmission. It just takes that power and diverts it, or I don't know the right term, but it takes that like raw energy and like movement, and it'll move it towards like the bar, right? Like if I have the bar on my back and stuff like that. So the your ability to display your strength is only as strong as your ability to control your body. And I mean that from, yes, like a coordination perspective, but also just in like like how tight can you brace, or how tight can you brace, like how solid is your brace, stuff like that. And then how well can you move? And just how much effort, like neural effort, can you just like push out and like perform and stuff like that. Which is why for almost all my clients, whether they want to do something that's more bodybuilding, or powerlifting, or kind of a mix in between, I always make sure there's some element of like, hey, I'm teaching you how to move. And that's probably one of the hardest things to do, like online, just because I'm not there. But I think that's what's fun because it's kind of a challenge. Like I get to develop like cues that are more universal. And I think there are a plethora of cues out there in the world, and they all have use somewhere. But I think to my point of like programming, it's only as useful when the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, when it's
And
relevant.
yeah, exactly. Like I think there are cues that are just universal and that I think everyone should be working on. Like the stronger I get, the more I realize that all I'm really doing is refining the fundamentals. I'm
Yeah.
not I'm not doing anything super crazy. It's just, you know, coming up with a way to move consistently, uh, move with good technique. And when I say good technique, I mean like just, it's hard to quantify, but I think the essence of what I mean is you can always tell when someone's moving really sloppily versus when like okay, like they have control. I think a good way to put it is like staying in the path of most resistance, like for the squat, for example. Like if we're trying to do like a true high bar squat, you wouldn't want your hips to rock back so much. You'd want to stay more forward and upright. And everyone's going to look a little bit different. Like everyone's movement and body is different. Like I have a very upright squat, but that doesn't mean I try to
You
teach my
do.
clients
You
to
do.
have a very thanks. Have a very like upright squat too. The ideal is like, yeah, we want to sit down and basically stand back up. It's like forget which Greek philosopher said this, but it's like there's there's this idea of like a cup, right? Like this is a cup, but also like a mug is a cup. Is a bowl a cup? So it's like we have an idea of what a cup is. So like in the same vein, cool, we have an idea of what a squat is, but it's everyone's form of a squat is going to be a little bit different. So learning how to tailor that to them individually, I think is what's really crucial. And I think that's what I mean by good technique. It's like, okay, how like finding out what is your individual form of squat. How do we refine it? How do we get it to a point where we can train it consistently so that like maybe it doesn't wreck you fatigue wise or something like that. And that's pretty much all I'm doing. It's just cool. Like these are my biomechanics. These are my leverages. How
Yeah.
do I maximize it? How do I train for it? What are my weaknesses? Because you could have like my morphology is designed for squatting. I have
Big time.
shorter femurs, shorter femurs, longer torso, but that presents a lot of challenges when it comes to how I coordinate my posterior chain, which is why I'm doing so much for it, especially in the beginning when I first worked with Paris. I even told him, I was like, dude, like my posterior chain, like I'm not coordinated. It sucks. It's for sure a weakness in my deadlift, and I want to like get better at it. And I think that's what people like should be doing. If you're longer limbed, like in your femurs, you should probably do more direct quad work. That's probably what you should be doing. Whereas with me, it's like I get enough of that. Like my squats hammer my quads enough. What I need is something different. And yeah, so I don't remember the original point of me bringing this up, but that was something that I
Well,
for
with the mugs, right? The mugs are different squats, right?
yeah. So yeah, that's what I mean. Like everyone has different morphology, and that's going to present with it, different strengths, different weaknesses. And then okay, the train came back. I remember now. And so yeah, like that's basically if there is any like secret recipe, it's that. Like it's that. It's about like finding your own individual form with things. There are universal markers and there are like universal sort of like rules that you should follow. And it's about that balance of like, okay, how am I moving in a way where I am still following those sort of like universal things, but still maximizing like my technique and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And even then it's like all the things that I do technique wise, like I'm not breaking any rules. Like it's just all like it's just all what's worked for people and it's worked for me.
So squat wise, this is, I mean, this one can be a contentious one because you have
Mm.
there's the starting strength approach to squatting, then you have like squat university with like this talk about shoes and different cues and
Mm.
working on mobility in different places. So there's a lot of ideas people have about how to fix squats, but I think if there's a general trend we can all probably agree on is that especially the back squat and sure the front squat too, it's a hard exercise to perform
Yeah.
correctly. So what do you think some of the like just a short list, the biggest reasons why people struggle with the squat, like doing it with good crisp technique?
I think it's because I can actually kind of relate to this because while I've always been very gifted in like my ability to squat, that still took a lot of effort to achieve. When I first started lifting, I was only ever able to front squat because I just didn't know how to coordinate like my shoulders very well. Like I could barely hold the bar on my back. And I think part of that is, for me at least, squat is very mental. And that's because it's literally on my body. And I can't really, unless I have a mirror, but I don't like lifting with a mirror too much. Um, I literally can't like see it. Like it's just my sensation and my feeling. I think
A
this is what
deadlift you can let go of, right? If you need to.
exactly. Deadlift, you can let go. Bench, you can have spotters, spotter arms, if you're not dumb. Thankfully, when I like messed up my pec, I had a spotter that racked it early. But yeah, squat is just like, yeah, you could set up spotters too, but or spotter arms and stuff like that too. But it's still, it's just, it's on you. And like, if you mess up, boy, do you mess up,
Oh yeah.
especially if you're lifting some pretty heavy weight. So I think there's a big mental aspect to it. It's like it's a very, I think comparatively to deadlift and bench, it's also a very long range of motion. So it's just like you're moving through a lot of space. And it's just like, yeah, how do you move from point A to point B? Like that's tough. And I think for me, I know in the beginning was also that mental aspect of like where do I put my hips? Where do I, where do I go with X, Y, and Z? Where do my knees go? And I think something, because you mentioned starting strength, something that I'm not the biggest fan of all that they preach, but
Yeah.
one thing I will say is that they do a very, very excellent job of communicating and teaching leverages and physics and biomechanics in a way that is so incredibly digestible. I think they're a good starting point if you want to learn the general form and stuff like that. And I think just through experience, when I was working as a personal trainer at Crunch, and there were a lot of people that came to me that just never lifted in their life. And I think for me, it's just learning how to move with external load on your body is hard because it literally changes, your physics, and you have to move through that. And on top of that, because the bar's on top of your back, like you got to brace with it in a certain way to achieve that like nice equal tension throughout all like, 360 degrees of your body and your core and stuff like that. So I think a good way is just kind of like riding a bike, which funnily enough, I don't know how to ride a bike, but you have your training wheels, right? Like you have your training wheels. It could be like a goblet squat, it could be like a bodyweight squat. And you work your way up until getting into like a bar. So I think it's really just the balance of it, learning how to move with your body, finding your stance, stuff like that, finding your hip width, which my general rule of thumb with that stuff is like start with shoulder width apart for like stance width, flare your toes out 10 degrees, and then we just kind of go from there. For some clients that works, others it might not. That's fine. Just adjust. That's just a good like starting point for most people. And then you can just kind of like build on top of that. So in my experience, I think it's just the balance aspect because it's very hard to balance, especially when you have something on you. Secondly, it recruits just so much musculature, and I think for that reason, it's very challenging for people to just have to focus on so many things. Because it's a lot. You got to get tight with your back a certain way. You got to get your abs tight a certain way, but you got to maintain like a certain position with like your spine. You don't want to be too flexed, too overextended. It's just like there's so much going on. So I think it's just overwhelming for some people. I think that's what it is. It's just overwhelming.
Yeah. That's a pretty good explanation. I tend to agree. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now as far as how that influences variations, we talked a little bit about your mindset and also that you've got from Paris on how you would program with the 1.5 reps and then
Mhm.
the competition style of pause reps, the different variations. Now, how about exercise selection, especially for the squat pattern? How would that, change from individual? Do you think there's a big difference in, these really long femur guys, Arnold Schwarzenegger? I don't know if you saw the clip where, he talks about how back squats, he didn't like how much back squats he could feel on his back, so he would spend
Yeah.
more of his squat time doing front squats. Whereas in your case, you're a very upright squatter, and yet you still love doing front squats because you're just built for squatting in general. So,
Yeah.
how much does like individual leverages and then maybe, I don't know, mobility or something like that, how much does that influence exercise selection versus just nailing in technique?
I think it might depend on the goal, and I think we can start defining it. If there's if the goal is more like Arnold's case, he's just trying to, he's
He's
a
just
bodybuilder.
bodybuilding.
He's
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
build muscle.
for sure.
Like that for him makes sense why he would pick something that's his weakness because he's not very good at that, so he needs to attack it more.
Yeah.
And that's actually something I like about like the old school era of like lifting. It's very just like, well, I suck at this, so I'm gonna do it. And that's kind of what I've adopted lately too. Like, like yeah, I suck with RDLs. I should probably do them more. I'm gonna get better at it. And I think regardless of if uh if you're if you're doing it for hypertrophy, if you're doing it for strength, I think there's always value in attacking your weaknesses. And as far as like strength goes, for me personally, I just enjoy front squatting. It's also not as strong as my high bar squat, which is my comp squat. So, uh, in terms of spacing out the progression, like that's a very valuable tool for me to use because I can still push it subjectively, but I'm never going to front squat more than I back squat. I think literally the last time I ran, yeah, the first sort of training cycle I ran with Paris, I ended with that 550 front squat, and then like a couple blocks later for high bar, I took the same weight 550 and did it for like 5 reps. So it's
Wow.
like the the potential for overload with each exercise is just different. So, I think a good rule of thumb for powerlifting or strength is picking variations that allow you to continuously build up. And that doesn't, it's not a straight line up either. There's going to be some ebbs and flows, and that's totally okay. It's to be expected. You should be going lighter and then pushing it, and then going lighter and then pushing it. So I think it's not, there should be space for you to train your weaknesses. But as far as like building that strength and progressing it, like let's say we have something that's squatting like 2 times a week. We have one day where it's like, yeah, okay, you're a longer limbed fellow. Like we're gonna be doing maybe like a sissy style plat squat. We're gonna just absolutely annihilate your quads on this day. And maybe we can turn that into like a heel elevated high bar or front squat or SSB. Again, very knees forward, a lot of quad. But your main work, we can probably stick to something that's closer to what a true squat is, like on the floor or with like your heels on the floor. Um, it could be, I think my go-tos right now are like SSB squat and high bar for low bar guys. And then if I do have a high bar squatter, front squats if they can tolerate it, because even that variation, again, it's still kind of a high ceiling like skill as well. So it's really just dependent, but lots of pauses, SSB if they have it. Try to teach them some kind of front squat. But getting back to your main point though, like when it comes to strength, as far as like we define the parameters of like the goals and such, it's really, I really just think about like what can we do before we get to the main competition work in order to space out like the progression. And does that mean like using a different variation outright, like a different implement, like yeah, like an SSB, like a high bar or front squat, whatever? Or does that mean like just giving you a bunch of reps? Because obviously like you can't lift more with with 10 reps than you can with like 5 or 1 or something like that. So that's just kind of how I think about it. It just always goes back to how do we map out the progression? How do we make sure we're not peaking too late or peaking too early.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Your focus is on good progressions being
Yeah.
specific to your goal at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think that lends me to go down the path of like, okay, what are my options for like exercise variations and stuff like that?
Well, and
Um,
you said this too, leaning into your weaknesses, no matter who you are.
yeah, like there should
It's
always
good.
be space for that, no matter
Yeah,
what. Yeah.
good. Very good. Awesome. So we're talking about the squats now, the B and the D. So we had discussed about. I had mentioned one of the points would be, talking about squat, bench, deadlift
Mhm.
being inadequate, adequate,
Mhm.
the king of hypertrophy exercises for their relevant muscles. So, what are your thoughts on these as just tried and true bodybuilding exercises? And how do you feel about some of the videos, whether it's in the Noble Natty sphere, if you've
Mhm.
seen some of them, or just in general, maybe some of these videos where people will say it's like dangerous. Athlete X has a classic video back in the day where he told people like never to bring the bar to your chest because of what it'll do to your rotator cuff. And of course, in the video, he's demonstrating a bench press with a perfectly flat back. So it's like, well,
Yeah.
hey, you just like off your chest a little bit. It's probably a little easier on your rotator cuff, but
100%.
it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's things like that, right? So not only suboptimal dangerous, but even some people would say, even when executed well, not the best for hypertrophy. What do you think about that? Are they good? Are
So
they any good?
so as far as I would say as far as it goes with like on the more of the Athlean side of things, I guess we can call it.
Yeah.
Where which I've consumed Athlean content before. Like that was an interesting time. And I've certainly gotten value from it, so no shade. But on that side of the conversation of these exercises are dangerous, like inherently, it's just not worth it. I disagree. And I disagree because there isn't really a standard for movement as it stands right now. And before I go off on that, so on the biomechanics guru side of like it's just inherently dangerous. I don't agree with that. On the other side of they're just better exercises.
Hmm.
Uh, I on okay, so on the biomechanics side, yeah, I don't agree with that. And on the it's just not worth it side, I don't agree with that either. And I don't agree with the former because I think there's just no standardized way of movement. And it's basically just the wild, wild west. The only thing when it comes to like movement variability and stuff like that, like yeah, like you can have kind of bad form and you can still do well in a powerlifting competition. You can still go 9 for 9 if you just follow their commands and their guidelines. So that is some type of like standardized like form and stuff like that. But even to me,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just like, ugh. But anyways, on the other side of things where it's just not worth it, I think every single exercise has its time and place. Kind of going to my point of programming again too, like does it does it make sense to do it? If yes, why not? I think it's good to keep things on rotation. I think maybe if your goals aren't strictly for strength and maybe you don't really care too much about, progressing like your bench press per se, go ahead and do a cable fly. Like if that's what you like to do, if you get a lot of gains out of that, go ahead and like try it out, like see what works for you. And you might just develop something like your own style or something, or just your own understanding of like, cool, like this works, this fits my goals. All right, great. And I think I just wouldn't, part of me just, it just doesn't sit right with me to just throw an exercise out completely. Um, and and yeah, I just say that because if there's a purpose to it, and if you can plainly state it, and if you can see progress in the sense of you're doing more reps, you're adding more weight,
Yeah.
meanwhile, like your movement is still, within a certain standard, then and if all those three things are satisfied, then that's a very good quality, like those are all great like data points. And if that's the case, then I don't really think there's an issue. If maybe someone just personally doesn't like to bench press, that's fine. That's your personal like take and opinion and your own feeling. But I think going back to my point with like the biomechanics side of like it's just not an optimal or it's just not worth it. It's not inherently worth it. I just think there hasn't been much of a standard for like what good quality movement means. And if anything, I feel like that's one of the things I really try to push with my clients. I guess going back even earlier to our conversation about like, you know, a person's individual biomechanics is just like figuring out like their form of a squat, of a bench, of a deadlift, because everyone has a different cup. And you know, just kind of going from there. Um, and that's kind of why like I'm wanting to post what I post now on like my YouTube channel, especially. Because I try to keep that channel more like I guess just like educational, and just like informative. Whereas on my Instagram is just yeah, it's just all the troll posts and just for fun and all that in the memes and like the lifting and stuff, and you know, just sharing you know, my clients' progress and stuff like
Dragon
that.
Ball Z memes and so forth.
That yeah, because you know my clients work their butt offs too, so like I want to show them and all the hard work they're doing. Um, but yeah, like that's why I like made that video about like deadlifts and stuff like that. And it's just like here's my setup, here's my approach to the slack pull, and it's just like this is kind of what works. And it's a framework, and it's at least it's a framework, it's a skeleton for people to use and then flesh out. And I think that's what is most important, as far as like the content that I want to push out, and just like the kind of things that I think about too when I am coaching someone. It's just like, okay, like I have this understanding of something. Let's try it out as best we can, like within that client, and then you know let's evolve it for their own like progress as well. So I think on both ends of the spectrum, I think it's a very, I don't want to say it's like reductionist because everyone kind of says that now, but I think it's a very like, I think it's a very lazy answer on both ends. I think there are somewhere in the middle where like you can optimize how you perform a movement and you can become more proficient at it. And then on the other end, I think it's just like, I guess on that other end of like, oh, like it's just suboptimal. There's no point. There's better exercises. Um, I can't help but feel that that's a bit of a cop out.
I agree.
Because it's just yeah, it's just I just can't fathom being like, yeah, we're never doing this again. And it's like, why? So I don't know. I think because yeah, like my opinion is every exercise has its purpose. It's just some things are better suited for other things. Some everything's a tool. Like I'm not gonna use a hammer to polish, or not polish, but I'm not gonna use a hammer to like polish a vase. Like that's not what that's meant for. Very different tool, wrong thing to use. So I think that's kind of where I stand on all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, so you're not concerned that there's this like, the masses have been deceived into doing squat, bench, and deadlift to get big muscles. You're not worried that they're wasting their time.
No, I wouldn't say people are wasting their time. I think there is I think one of the benefits of bigger compound movements is that raw, like just you can overload the crap out of it. I caught myself that time. You can just overload it so much. And I think that stimulus on your nervous system is just different. And you can argue that like, well, a hack squat is better because it doesn't hit like your lower back as hard, it doesn't hit your hips as hard. It's like, yeah, and we're gonna do some of those. I think actually, yeah, I think a good way of putting it is like there are. I got this from a colleague of mine. His name is Dylan Smith. He's super strong. I haven't talked to him in a minute, but love him to death. Uh, he. I remember he would go on tangents. He does that on his Instagram. I think it's like Dylan underscore C underscore Smith. Great guy. Anyways, he would talk about how he would use like the broader brushes to like obviously like lay down the foundation of a painting, and I know how that works because I was in fine art. And then you use your smaller ones, your smaller brushes to flesh out the finer details, and that's the essence of like training. You have your bigger compound movements. It gets a lot of things done all at once. It's a very, I guess, globally applicable exercise for you. Like it affects your nervous system more globally, I guess is a way to put it. And then if you want to focus like laser focus on one thing, cool, like let's do some leg extensions, let's do some hack squats if you want to grow your quads on top of like doing your squats and stuff like that. Of course, make the space for it in your program. You don't want to do too much or too little. It's about finding like what works best for you in the sense of how much time you want to spend in the gym realistically. Like what are your life circumstances right now, because I work with a variety of people. It's more than just like lifters. I think one of my oldest clients is like in his mid 40s, and one of my youngest is like 19, 18. And like you just, I mean, well, we chatted about this before too, but this is one of the things that I find really rewarding about like working with people, but it's helping them figure out like how they can still reach or work towards their fitness goals, and kind of balance their life with it too. Because I don't need a client to be in the gym for 2 to 3 hours. Like, first of all, that's not always realistic. And I also don't want to just give them like a laundry list of random things to do. Like, again, everything has like a purpose behind it. um and so it's like, yeah, like if you have the space for it, if you can, if your sleep and nutrition's on point, you can recover for it, cool, let's do it. Like let's do all these things, as much of it as we can. I think it's I think people are I think people like to subtract more than they like to add,
Mm.
in the sense of that they cut themselves short. And I think, well, it's about pushing yourself inside and outside the gym, pushing yourself to do and strive for something, whether it be like how you perform a movement, how you execute a certain technique and develop that technique. Also, just the effort, the actual effort you're putting into like loading up more weight, squeezing out that last couple of reps, and then outside of the gym too. And it's like, are you eating enough protein? Are you eating enough calories? Are you sleeping enough? And it's not that things have to be perfect, but it's that we're just trying to maximize as much as we can given our life circumstances. And I mean, like, I think, I mean, we can even talk about like this on a more like, I guess, personal level too, where it's like, what are you doing with your own life? It's like everyone has their own circumstances. And I think at the end of the day, it's not about being perfect. It's just about doing enough, in the sense of just doing as much as you can for now, so that you can at least build up some of that momentum and some of that steam. I feel like that kind of went a different direction, but
No, 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 that's
um,
good. And some of us will be like Sam Sheether. The very few people will be like Sam Sheether and go 10 years and not skip a session. That
oh
man.
yeah, I'm I've been lifting. So yeah, I've been lifting since 2016, but I wouldn't even really count that first year as training. I would say I started training when it was like 2017. So it's been, I want to say 5.5, 6 years.
Oh wow.
Um, I will be the first one to admit that I have taken a couple days off, but I would say that my track record is still like highly like accurate in
Yeah,
terms of like getting it in. Um, but yeah, that is crazy though. That's a different kind of dedication, and like that's something to strive for.
yeah.
Like that's amazing. Like I can't wait for the day where, well, in 5 years, when I hit that like decade mark and I just get to look back at like everything I've worked towards, because I'm already at 5 and I'm just like, there is so much more work to get done. And that's what kind of excites me. Like, because yeah, like I mentioned earlier, like I do want to compete and all that stuff. And I do want to see what I can do. not necessarily within like certain federations, but just like I guess for myself too. Um, I I'm open to competing in like different feds, um, like just for fun, just because like meets around the Bay Area, they've definitely been getting more popular,
Mm,
but they fill up quick. That's one. Um, and meets are I don't know if this is just if this is just like a West Coast like California thing, but I just always felt like meets around here just take way too long.
mm.
And I'm not sure why. Like they usually run pretty well, but they always just end up like we're either done at like 9 or like midnight. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, but I don't want to be somewhere for that long. Like that's an entire workday plus some. Like I'm good. Um, but yeah. I know we were gonna talk about like future things that I wanted to like accomplish and
Yeah,
figure out.
yeah. So clearly
Davin.
things, changed, priorities changed along the way. You were training without a program. Buddy gets you on a program. So as it currently stands, balancing powerlifting and coaching and things like that. What are your future aspirations for all those things for lifting, competing, and even coaching? Tell us about that.
So coaching wise, I feel like I really just want to help as many people as I possibly can. Caveat being that they want to help themselves.
Yep.
Because I don't think anyone, and this is just my personal opinion, but I don't think anyone who's in a like a service-based business should bother helping someone if they're just not willing. Because
Totally.
who has the energy for that?
Totally.
Like I can only empathize with someone so much to the point
Yeah.
where it's like, well, are you gonna do anything about it?
There's a
Um,
point where you're babysitting and not really teaching.
yeah, exactly. And it's just like, all right, well, I'm not here for that. But I want to help out as many people as I can. And there's as somebody who's like doing coaching full time, running their own business, like scale is something that I think about a lot because on one hand, like I do want to help people. And I do want to make enough just to, be able to cover my needs and, have a savings and all the adult things. And I think what I really want out of coaching is to just kind of do all what I just said, help people, meet more people, learn more when it comes to what it like coaching others and like and part of that is also just lifting more too, like gaining the personal experience so that like I know what it means for someone to be able to squat 500 for the first time. I
Yeah.
know what it feels like to get there. Um and just continuing to provide value whether somebody is directly working with me or not because most people don't need a coach. If
Yeah.
you have very specific goals, if maybe you have the time to invest in that stuff, and if maybe you just kind of need more direction, 100%. Like go if that's something you actually need and you're just like spinning your wheels when it comes to programming and training and all that
Yeah.
stuff, yeah, definitely reach out. It's always good to reach out to a professional for, however much time you want to, invest in that, and invest in yourself. But I think for the vast majority of people, like you just follow a good program, like follow some principles and just get consistent with it and you're going to get a lot out of it. Like there's no like Sam, he's been training for 10 years. He's been training for 10 years. Like he's been so consistent. I've been training for 5. And it's like even with me, it's like sometimes I'm like, no, I can be doing this better. I can be doing that better. I need to be optimizing X, Y, and Z. And it's like it's a process. It's never going to be perfect, but it's just always going to be a process of something. And I think people are just not I don't want to say not. I don't want to use a blanket statement like that, but I think people just don't realize. I think it's better. That's more HR friendly. People don't realize how process oriented you have to be
Yeah.
with lift.
Yeah.
Um, it's it is kind of a commitment. You're making the time to commute to the gym, to eat enough, to sleep enough, to take care of your
Yeah,
body, take care of your health. And of course, that's going to pay off in dividends. I don't know if I use that term right, but that's going to pay off big time.
sure.
As you get older and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just, you get the ball rolling now, and like steam will just pick up. Like it just will. You just keep doing it. You keep going consistently. You find a flow with it. And then you just kind of grow from there.
Do you
And I
think
think
keeping the ball rolling is easier than getting it started for many people?
I I remember learning this in like in my time as a personal trainer, where they would talk about like the phases of initiating like an action, and there'd be
Hmm.
I don't remember the concepts, but basically, like, there's people that don't even think about it. And then there's people that do think about it. There's like a phase where, yeah, I should do this. Yeah. And then there's another phase where it's like, all right, like I should do this. And now I'm looking, like I'm trying to find help. And then there's that phase of like, pre-action, action, maintenance. And I think that for me, I feel like it's always the hardest in the beginning of something. Um, but then as you keep it going, actually, yeah, I think in the beginning it's hardest, and then as you keep it going, it gets easier because you literally, in this context, get your reps in. And the more you practice that habit, that pattern, it just becomes part of like your lifestyle, and it there isn't anything wrong when you kind of maybe you do kind of like halt or you drop the ball for a bit. I think what matters most is just getting right back into it again as soon as you can. Because I think because it's just patterns and habits at the end of the day. So I always think it's hardest in the beginning. And I think that's when, especially when you're trying something completely new, I think that's when it's just the most overwhelming, the most frustrating, because you just have so many questions because you don't know anything. But yeah, once you get the ball rolling, it's just like you pick it up a little bit here and there. You find your flow. So that's what I think about that.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so uh, speaking of the coaching and the clients, we touched on this a little bit, right? Like, don't help people who don't really want to help themselves, or at least don't put in the prerequisites to helping
Yeah.
themselves, right? So, what is it that makes a good client? And then afterwards, I'll ask you about what makes a good coach. So when you're talking about these clients, what can they do to get the most out of their program when they are working with a coach? Like, what makes the good client?
So I think so. I'm a coach, and I'm also a consumer. Like I work with coaches too.
Yeah, yeah,
Personally, I can probably write a decent program for myself right now, like a good one. But part of my brain is just like, I always just want to learn from someone. I want to learn from someone who knows more than me because I know that I'm never going to know everything.
yeah.
So it's just a matter of I just want to keep growing. And then second to that too, if I do write myself a program, I know when I roll up into the gym, I'm going to be like, not doing that. Yeah, we're changing this up. All right, never mind. I'm just going to go home. This sucks. Like I just know that from my own, like as like my own personality too. Like I will second guess everything I write.
Mm.
So I just need to have like somebody I collaborate with, and just be like, hey, like I'm feeling X, Y, and Z. What are your thoughts? And Paris is just like, cool, bro, let's do it. And I was like, all right, cool, let's do it. But as far as like what clients and athletes can do to be better clients or better athletes, on the client side, just listen. Like listen, um, try it out. If it makes sense to you, then I think it's worth it. Um, if and on the other side too, like there's nothing wrong with asking questions. I think to quote my comms professor from my first year at Cal Poly, probably one of my favorite classes, public speaking of all things. Well, no, that makes sense. I like talking, but when I was younger, I was just terrified of public speaking. But anyways, my professor, Professor Mel, he would say that there's no such thing as a dumb question, but there is such a thing as a question that just wastes time. So, like, ask questions. There's nothing wrong with that. But know the difference between a question that wastes time and a question that's like okay to ask. Um, and even then, you can ask away. Like if my clients are watching this, I don't get offended by your questions or anything, especially when it comes to programming. I think the more the better. I think there's blindly trusting the process, and then there's understanding. And I think the purpose of a coach is to help a client understand the process so that they can then trust it. But yeah, client side, like drop the ego. Like you are reaching out to a person for a reason. If you are genuinely not satisfied with the service you're getting, with the answers you're getting, with the results you're getting, which, well, first of all, again, give it a shot. Drop the ego, give it a shot, try it out. If you feel it, if you feel it working, if it's not working, communicate. Try. Just try. And maybe you kind of develop a better sense for those things as you get older in your training age and as your lifting IQ grows. That's cool, but just try and drop the ego. And I think that's really it when it comes to clients. Just hear out your coach, hear out how they want to structure the communication, hear out how they want to structure the program, ask questions. They should be telling you like how the program should be running, the purpose of certain things, how it's going to grow, stuff like that. And just roll with it, like commit. And as far as like an athlete side of things, I think kind of more of the same, but a little bit more on the ego front of just you got to let it go. I think too many. I think because I'm going to say power. I'm going to use powerlifting as an example. All my powerlifters, I love you guys, but a lot of powerlifters are kind of within that like younger age demographic. So I think there's just a general lack of maturity, which is fine. Dude, people grow. Like everyone's going to experience or is going to go through phases of like them being, a little dim-witted. And that's fine. Like we're not born into this world knowing everything. And that's kind of like one of the cool things about, being alive. We get to learn. So I would just say like on if you are a powerlifter on the athlete side, just be open to learning. And just be open to like hearing your coach out. I think that's what's going to make like a very good client. It's just being receptive, communicating, and just committing. And then on the coaching side of things, it's I feel like the coaching side of things, it's oddly enough kind of the same. I think when it comes to the coach and client relationship, things have to be even, but at the same time, it's like, again, if I'm your coach, you're coming to me for a reason. So it's like what I'm going to give you is what I'm going to give you at the end of the day. But I will always be willing to concede and, admit my wrongs if we just gave it an honest try and it just straight up didn't work. And I think that's part of the process too. Like you just try, it doesn't work, you go back to the drawing board, you figure it out, you come up with a game plan that makes more sense. And yeah, to even go back to my point of like how process oriented lifting can be, like that's the process. Like failing is part of the process. You're never going to know, or you're never going to learn how to, grind through a rep if you've never tried, if you never went to RP9, RP10, risked failing and do fail. But, now we have more data. And at the end of the day, like that's it. Like it's just more data. And it's your ability to take that data and like as a coach, take that data or even a lifter, but it's your ability to take that data and come up and revise a better game plan to it quickly. I think that's what makes a very good coach. I think something that's underrated is also just communication as well. Coaching, there's very minimal barrier for entry. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing necessarily. I mean, like that's how I got into things. Like you can just do it. But because there's very low barrier for entry, things just get watered down. But I feel like if you're a quality coach, if we can call your service a product, and if it's a very good freaking product, people are going to talk about it.
Oh yeah.
And like word of mouth will spread, people will know. And at that point, it's just like, cool, like you found what works for you, just keep doing it. If any, yeah, coaches are listening and like, are trying to grow their business and stuff like that, it's just like, serve your clients. Like they're on the client end, you're coming to a coach for a reason. You want to work with them for a reason because they've done something that maybe you haven't yet, and they can help you get there. On the coaching side of things, these people are coming to you. Like they're paying you. I don't care if they're paying you a lot or a little, they're paying you. And like you should be able to provide something for them. Whether it be like a solid program, communication, and that stuff, like a lot of that is also personal preference too. I certainly have a personal style with my own coaching. Like I know some coaches that like to give programs like weekly updates. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I personally just like here's a full 4 week plan. If we need to adjust it, we will. I like checking in with my clients. I like communicating with my clients on a daily basis, or at least as often as I can. But those are things you just kind of figure out and like learn for yourself, and whatever you can tolerate. Because when I first started coaching, the way I set things up certainly wasn't the way that it was now. And that's just because I hadn't gotten my reps in. Whereas now it's just like, cool, like I've been doing this for like, oh God, how long have I been doing this? 20. Okay, so like, yeah, I've been doing this since 2018. So like 4.5, 5 years. Yeah. So like you just grow. Like you just grow individually as a coach as well. You just continue to refine how you teach certain movements, your own cues, your own framework, and just being able to provide more value for your clients too. Because again, like they're paying you, like you should give them something back. Like come on. So
You
that's
don't
just
want to
the
be
way.
one of these the coaches that people joke about where it's like, yeah, they glanced at your program for like 9 seconds, changed two things, and that's like your update, right?
Yeah. Or like you just send them footage and you don't hear from them for a while or something. And
Yeah.
I get it. Like stuff happens. I
Yeah.
think it's just again like just communicate. Like just communicate what's up. And I think that's what separates just a good coach from like a not very good coach.
Yeah, you can't be a good coach and then put in the least amount of effort possible to coaching your clients and think that that's going to be like the best way to grow your business. Like, sure,
Yeah.
V-Shred as a company probably is worth millions of dollars, but you know what? Is that really the best? Is that the best way to serve people? Like sending the most generic cookie cutter programs to people, or actually like paying attention to what people's needs are?
Yeah. Yeah. I get what you're saying. Yeah. And that's just that problem like with scale. It's like how do you provide as much value as you can for all these people? And then yeah, you just have like I think this is a that side. The cool thing about the internet now is that there is so much information available to you. You just have to look in the right places.
Hmm.
Um, and if someone's gonna buy into that, I mean that's on them. You know, and if it works for them, well, damn, at least it works for them.
Even
But
better.
no judgment there. But yeah, it's just there is so much out there. And if if there's if there's something you're facing that's a problem, then
Hmm.
I think you can be able to find it with just enough effort in the right direction.
So here's one good question to finish up on for the topic of coaching. Is there anything that you could say to potential future clients of yours or anyone's in general who's watching? What would be like immediate things that, are qualifications of a good coach? Is it letters after the name? Is it where they went to school? Is it certificate? Is it big lifts, big muscles? How old they are? What's the dead giveaway of a good coach?
Results, like that's end all be all. Like if you can get yourself results, if you can get your clients results, I don't think it matters if you're the a string bean or a whole house. Like if you can get people results, and if you can get people results And if you can deliver them a product that they're actually happy about and a service that they actually like, cool, you're winning. Like that's a good source right then and there, you know? And I know some knowledgeable people that like they might not share like content or something on like YouTube, for example, but that's another plus too. Like figure out uh as somebody who is shopping for a coach, you know, get a good idea of what their training principles are and their, I guess, values, um, just so you can understand where they're coming from. And, you know, sometimes that's, you know, subscribing to somebody on YouTube and checking out a couple of their videos or going to their Instagram and just kind of, you know, like wading through their captions if they, you know, go on tangents and stuff like that, like I do. Like, just do your homework as well.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with all that, man. I think that them getting results for other people and themselves is always going to be the thing that screams the loudest that they're qualified.
100%. Yeah.
Good, good. Awesome. So, still on the topic of, what makes someone good, let's say the athletes, other than, right, I framed this to you earlier, other than
Mhm.
just having the blessing of amazing genetics, what makes great athletes in your view? What's make them stand out?
Mhm. There are a couple things that I'm thinking about. I just want to make sure I'm
Yeah,
framing my answer
yeah.
coherently. So, genetics, obviously, and I really think there's no other sport that is so dependent on genetics. And on one hand, I say that, and I say that with caution because I don't want to make it seem like things aren't attainable for everyone.
Yeah.
Because if you work hard enough, if you work smart enough as well, um, if you can recover, if you're on top of your nutrition and everything, and just your sleep and stuff like that, you're gonna go very far. And I think a lot of people would be very surprised with themselves. Um, I think I guess this is turning to a side tangent, but I think there's an unfortunate lack of like this self belief that people have, and I think it's really like disheartening sometimes because it's just like you just gotta try, like you just gotta try. But going back to what you were saying about like athletes and stuff like that, genetics aside, um, I really think it just boils down to who's willing to do the work. Um, because you're probably going to do things that you don't want to do. You're probably going to there's space for wants, but there are also needs, and you have to fall in love with the process of doing those things. Um, you know, like I might enjoy spamming my shoulders and stuff like that for my accessory work. But you know, there also needs to be space for doing things like, yeah, training my posterior chain because that's a weakness of mine. Or um or maybe taking a break from like very comp specific work because you're just banged up, dude. Like you're just banged up and like you need to take a break and you know, we just need to work on different movements. And I think there's whether there's a level of almost detachment that you kind of have to let go because like I have a couple of my clients that are in meet prep right now and they're doing great. Um one of my guys is like he just can't stop hitting PRs on his squat.
Classic.
And I
Nice.
remember he was telling me like, "Oh, dude, like I want to be in meet prep forever." And I was just like, "Damn, like I used to feel that way."
Yeah.
I know that feeling. Like that's awesome. But I also know like now, at least not that I'm like just more mature, it's just sometimes you do have to put the brakes on it because you can't be chasing multiple stimuluses at the same time. Like it has to be a little bit more directed. Um, and and so I believe athletes need to fall in love with the process. They need to accept the process for what it is. They need to be open to change because their bodies are ever changing. You know, the way that I trained to squat 315, 405, 500, 600, whatever it might be. It's a different game with each tier of strength. Like it's just going to be vastly different. My I've been trying to look into how old school powerlifters used to train. And I think I actually watched the podcast that Pete Rubish did with Dan Green. And Dan was talking about how, like, I forget the powerlifter he name dropped, but he was saying how, like, he was doing like his comp squat for like speed reps on one day, like 50%, but very low repetition. And this is a guy, by the way, that's like, he like has like a 22 or had a 2200 total. And I think when you're that strong, the name of the game when it comes to programming, it just changes. It's just vastly different. But he was just hammering away on his like main lift and like super light, but like very fast reps. But the dense, the hard work that he just did, like a bunch of front squatting. And I don't know if, and like, my best squat is 640. And I think right now for me, it's like, okay, how do I want to get to 700 and I know it's there, but then, like, what about after? What do I have to do after? Like, I can't just be doing the same thing over and over again. Like if I run like a 5x5, like I'm probably gonna snap in two, man. And I don't know if that's my own self-limiting belief, but you get what I'm saying, where it's like the game just changes. It's just different, like
there's a point where you need a second gallon of milk, or it's just not gonna
yeah. Yeah, like it's just they're just different tiers of strength, and that elicits different tiers of programming. And as an athlete, you have to prepare yourself for that. Things are going to change, as they should when necessary. But anyways, outside of that point, like falling in love with the process, being willing to experiment, and I think just plain old working hard. Whether it doesn't make sense to you right now or it does, like just do the work, man. Like, because it's not, the work isn't going to get done itself. You can't expect something to change if you're just not going to do anything. So I think that's really it. That, and just being responsible about like your training too.
Which is like hard. A client, right? You gotta rein it in so he gets out of that, it doesn't get into trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'd agree with, really so much of what you just said there. And it's hard to separate. I hope
you're not just saying that to make me feel better.
No. It's like, can you really ever separate the fact that talented people are workhorses? Like, can you really separate? No, that's kind of what makes them stand out. And I've thought of this too, where it's like, if you're on the right track to really want to accomplish something, maybe not just in this context, exercise, but in general in life, you mentioned being an entrepreneur because you have your coaching business. Yeah, other people are going to look at you and see a pattern of your life that suggests you're making sacrifices to get what you want, what's really important. So, that's true in other contexts too. But if different people are commenting, wow, you go to the gym that early, or wow, you're at the gym that late, or you're skipping out on this like social event, you're skipping out on the alcoholic beverages, whatever it might be, whatever little sacrifices that are done on a week-to-week basis indicate to everyone around you just how high of a priority it is. It's kind of like the proof is in the pudding, in addition to, obviously, are you getting results? But it's a pattern of life as well as winning.
Yeah, 100%. And like if you're intelligent enough, which I would argue most people have a pretty good head between their shoulders. Then if you are working hard and if something isn't working, then it's like, okay, like it's time to change. Like it's time to do something different. It's time to figure it out. Like take inventory of yourself, how you're feeling, what you're doing, like what is limiting you, and then just go from there, man. Like it's always, everything is a work in progress. Like everything. Like there's no it's like that Dunning-Kruger effect. Have you seen that graph?
Oh, of
before?
course. Yeah.
Just, there's so much of that going on, but it's just like the earlier you can let go of that first phase of thinking you're an expert when you're really not, like the better off you are. Like just the better off you are, because all the if there's one thing that I've noticed across all the people that I look up to, it's that there's this spirit of inquiry, there's this spirit of just gotta figure this out. Like there's gotta be something else.
Yep.
And I think that's what kind of drives me right now. It's like cool, like I have frameworks, like I talked about. I have a style, maybe, if you will. But and sure it works in here and there and stuff like that, but it's there's I'm sure there's always going to be more to it. And it's that drive of like, cool, like let's just keep figuring this out. Whether it's like business related, coaching related, or like my clients, like helping them, my own training, whatever it might be, like life. It's just like, cool, let's keep figuring it out. That's how you gain experience. That's how you gain like true wisdom. And you don't just become like a fake guru or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so here's a interesting topic we could finish up on. This goes hand in hand with the coaching services and
Mhm.
how people try and market themselves and stand out, and also with the YouTube videos, how people will try and make themselves stand out. Science. Do you think there's really a big role in deferring to science to help you make a program? Is there really such a thing as a science-based program, or is that just kind of a buzzword in and of itself? What are your thoughts on that? Science influencing programs and whether or not it makes people qualified if they read studies. Is that better as a
I
coach?
think uh I think as far as marketing goes, everything's a buzzword. But I think there's so the thing with science, and so I'll preface this by saying that I've read a couple of studies before. I personally don't make it a I don't personally go out of my way to continue to keep
Yeah,
up with it.
yeah.
And I just do that because I don't want to say I don't have the time for it. Because I probably could make the time for it. So with that being said, I just don't make the time for it. Personally, I just don't. And I don't because I value my experiences more and the experiences of my clients more than what's
Me
on a
too.
piece of paper.
Me too, man.
Um, that being said, I think, published papers, studies, and stuff like that, I think that's still a resource. And I think that's still something that does have value. But I think I think a good way to put it is like, as soon as a history textbook is published, it's immediately outdated. That's a very extreme like example. I'm willing to admit that, but it's kind of the same thing with like science papers and stuff like that. As soon as it's published, it's dead. Like it's in the past.
And also, it takes so long to produce. Sometimes they're lagging behind the curve anyway,
That
right? They're
too.
catching
That
up.
too. That too. Whereas, like, if you can try it right then and there, and again, like I mentioned, when it does come to programming, like, what are the parameters of tracking something? Like, what are the data points? It's like, cool, is the movement quality there? Is it upheld? Is are they training consistently? All that stuff. It's just like you are kind of your own science project. Um, does that mean that coaches that use like science papers are better or worse? I wouldn't say so. I think what it really just depends on is like, yeah, like if they're getting if they themselves are getting results, if they can show and prove that they're also getting other clients' results too, okay, cool. Who cares if they're using science or not? They can use science to bolster an argument. Great. That's a great way to do that. They can use science to make a point. That's cool too. And if someone's just trying to be like, if someone is just trying to be I think science is a supporting tool, and there are other tools that you can use to back things up too. And I don't think it should be the only one thing you have going for you. If that is something you have going for you, though, again, like more power to you. I know I probably sound like I'm being super safe with my answer, but it's just like I don't see a problem with it.
Yeah.
I think I only see a problem when it's just going too far, and it's like, okay, you
It's
have
Joel
all,
Seedman, right? With the 90-degree eccentric, isometric,
yeah, and it's
whatever.
like, oh, you have all these papers, great, but like, can you actually apply it in the real world? Can you apply it now? Can you take action on it now? Okay, cool, you are.
Yeah.
And then back to the point, are they seeing results? Are they seeing progress? And I think also just like, I mean, to the point I made about like athletes too, like be open to trying new things. Same thing with coaches, be open to experimenting because you know you are running your own experiments. You know, however many clients you have, that's X number of experiments right then and there.
Yeah.
Like you're
Yeah.
repeating it. Like one,
Exactly. Repeatability
yeah,
across time. Yeah.
so that's how I
100%.
think about it. It's a great tool to use if you want to like affirm something or bolster like your own belief and all that stuff.
Hmm.
But like at the end of the day, like you're kind of running your own science experiment. So
Yeah.
take that as you will.
Okay, I'll ask you one more question on that just to spice it up. Just like before with credentials and separating your or genetics or do the other than genetics separating what makes a good athlete. Does science separate the best coaches from the unscientific coaches? Or is there really a mixture of the good coach might be obsessed with science, he might not be.
I think I'm just going back to my original answer of yeah, like can they get results? Because at that point it's just like who cares what avenue they take, so
Yeah.
long as they get them there. Because there are a number of ways to attack a problem and to solve it. And I think sometimes when you're presented with multiple answers, you just have to pick one. And you just have to be open to, and I think personally, you should just be open to trying to pick the next option when it feels applicable. Not because it's better or worse, but just because it's more experience. You know, you can develop like a better understanding. At the end of the day, it's just like develop that better understanding.
Awesome. And are there any parting words you have for the audience today, whether it's people who want to get into lifting, people who have doubts about themselves, natty limits, or thinking they're
Mhm.
stuck in their programs? Do you have any final message for the audience to help them push through and keep getting results?
I do. And I'm saying this because I feel like I've kind of experienced this over the past year, and that is just try. Like just try, put your best foot forward, keep putting your best foot forward, and yeah, keep taking inventory of yourself too. I think a little effort across a long period of time goes a very long way. And you're going to approach seasons where you might only be able to put in a little bit of effort here and there, but you know when the time's right, like just regardless of yeah, regardless of whether the time's right or not, keep putting in the effort. When you have more bandwidth to put in more, put in more. And what I mean by that is you just really have to try at the end of the day. And I think that in and of itself will get people very far. Like whether it be like just trying to improve their how many their adherence to a program, improving their recovery, improving how they work within the training session, how they move in a certain way. Like it just goes a long way. So start somewhere that you know is attainable enough for you, but still just pushes you just ever so much, and just keep doing that. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna leave y'all with. Just
Good,
a
good,
little
good.
effort over a long period of time, like that just goes a really long way.
Awesome. And then for the audience, for anyone who might be interested in being your client, are you taking on any clients at the moment?
At the moment, no, I do have a wait list. So if people
Nice.
still want to apply, by all means, like go ahead. I'll probably reach out to you within like a week tops. I will be reopening likely. late August, early September is probably when I'll reopen again. I've hit a cap and I don't want my quality to go down. I just want to focus on my guys. And right now for me, I'm just kind of in a season of maintaining and just like building from there. So yeah, by all
Wonderful.
means, like I'm open for y'all applying. You'll be on a wait list and you'll still hear from me though.
Very good. Very good. All right. So, where can people find you?
So y'all can find me on Instagram. It's simple username at Andrew Tang. Same thing for YouTube. Nice and consistent. Actually, one note about coaching applicants. If you want to stand out as an applicant, answer my questions thoroughly. That's all I'm going to leave you with. Just answer it thoroughly as best you can. That's going to help you stand out a lot.
Wonderful.
But yeah,
Fantastic.
that's where you guys can find me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. I'm glad I could have you on the show, and I really appreciate your in-depth answers to all these questions. So,
Hey, I appreciate you reaching out, taking the time to have this. I haven't been on a podcast in a while, so this is really fun for me, man.
fantastic. All right, and to the audience, go subscribe and go give Andrew a follow. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time. Cheers.
Thanks, Dan.